Chapter 3. Dugan laid his hand on Marla's shoulder.
Be careful, watch where you step. Look, but don't touch. Right.
Marla panned the lab.
Somebody went wacko in here. What do you think, robbery?
Maybe. Then again, Hopkins could have done this. Roid rage. He may have been taking something that caused drastic mood swings. An experiment went badly and he lost it.
Maybe so, Dugan, but dead men don't turn out lights. Someone besides Dr. Hopkins was in here.
She stepped around the end of a long island counter supported by oak cabinets. Most of the cabinet drawers were open. Notebooks were scattered on the countertop between various size bottles of chemicals, glass beakers, microscopes, and scientific meters. On the other side, the file cabinet drawers were opened, half of their contents scattered on the black and white tile floor.
Somebody ransacked this place. They were looking for something specific.
How do you figure that? Marla waved her hand at the mess in front of her.
Why would Dr. Hopkins dump the contents of his files on the floor? I could see knocking over the equipment and breaking glass beakers in a fit of rage, but this looks more methodical.
Dugan circled the island counter, studying the clutter before him, and joined Marla on the other side.
I see what you mean. Whoever did this pulled the files out, checked them, and tossed aside whatever wasn't relevant. Looks like he rummaged through everything till he found what he wanted, then turned the lights out and left.
Dugan rubbed his chin.
But that doesn't make sense either. Why would the killer stage a suicide and then come in here and leave the place looking like an obvious robbery?
Perhaps something went wrong. Let's say he kept one eye on the window and saw Mr. Ferguson come to the back porch. Then he knew he didn't have time to keep things neat. He tore through everything till he found what he was looking for and then took off.
That's a strong possibility. I'll have forensics do a thorough investigation in the house and here. Hopefully they'll come up with something to shed more light on what happened.
Dugan crossed to the other side and examined several shelves loaded with animal cages and aquariums.
Interesting. Doc Hopkins must have been testing animals. What an odd assortment. Mice, turtles, fish. Look, there's even a few lobsters over here.
Marla crossed the room, making sure to step in the open spaces. She pointed at a rodent cage.
This one has a name. Jasper.
A label had been placed at the base of the cage with the name and the date. May 15th, 2007.
Wonder what this date represents.
A white mouse popped up, sticking its nose between the bars, and Marla whipped her finger away.
Yikes! Wasn't expecting that greeting.
What's the matter, little mouse? Scare you?
Not really. It just surprised me. This must be Jasper.
Dugan tapped the cage, his hand wrapped with his handkerchief, and the mouse reacted by sitting on its hind legs as if it were begging.
Must be hungry.
Someone needs to be notified about these animals. By tomorrow, they'll all be hungry.
She knelt and examined a large glass tank on the shelf below the mouse. It contained a turtle that looked to be nearly a foot long.
This one has a name, too.
Dugan knelt beside her.
What is it?
Marla pointed to a label at the base of the tank.
Methuselah.
Dugan grinned.
Who was the oldest man in the Bible? I'll take the Old Testament for 1,000, Alex.
Very funny. Look, someone carved numbers into its shell.
Dugan leaned to get a better view.
I think it's a date. 1895. Way back when some kid probably found it in the woods and carved the date on its shell.
1895, is that possible? That would make it more than 115 years old.
What do you expect with a name like Methuselah?
Marla stood and offered her hand to Dugan.
You need help getting up, old man?
Dugan grasped her hand and waited for her to tug him to his feet.
I must not have the same longevity genes as Methuselah here.
He forced himself to let go, but the feel of her hand lingered in his mind. Marla scanned the cages and tanks along the rest of the shelves.
Whoever tore this place apart didn't bother the animals.
No.
Dugan eyed the papers at their feet.
If it was a thief, he wanted information or drugs.
Or both.
Dugan and Marla left the lab and headed back to the porch. Deputy Wilford stood at the top of the steps, hands on his wide hips. Dugan peered up at him.
I want crime scene tape around the lab.
He thumbed over his shoulder.
That big old garage is a lab?
Wilford asked.
Yep, the place is a mess. It's possible that someone shot Hopkins, then went out to the lab to steal drugs or even information. Don't know if the perpetrator found what he was looking for or not. Keep your eye on the place just in case he comes back.
Wilford straightened, chest expanding.
Will do, Sheriff. While you got the tape out, string some on the front porch and back porch.
I'm on it.
Wilford thudded down the steps and strode toward the driveway in the direction of the vehicles. Dugan gazed into the night sky, the canopy of stars like glitter on black velvet. The temperature had dropped, probably into the low 50s. He rubbed his arms.
Left my jacket in the car. You cold?
I'm fine. Marla had donned her gray Dare County Sheriff Department hoodie before she left the house.
I hear a vehicle coming.
Dugan tilted his head.
Probably Stern and the crime tech team.
They walked around the corner of the house to see the headlights approaching. A white Chevy Tahoe pulled in behind the other vehicles, and several people got out.
Is that you, Stern?
Yeah, I'll be with you in a minute, Sheriff.
The forensic team, 4 of them, went to the back of the SUV. Stern often rubbed Dugan the wrong way, but he had to admit the man excelled in crime scene analysis. His team was very knowledgeable and had served Dare County for many years. Good people. Dugan and Marla walked up the driveway to the front of the house where the vehicles were parked.
Have you met the CSI folks yet?
Not formally, but I think I know who they are. Of course, everybody knows Roger.
Yeah,
Dugan thought.
all women anyway.
Roger Stern stepped out from behind the Chevy Tahoe. He carried 2 black cases that resembled large fishing tackle boxes. Jessie Lou Winters, a short, muscular blonde in her late 40s, followed him, carrying a clipboard and a black briefcase. Behind her, Big Jim Thomas, 6 feet 4 inches tall and nearly 300 pounds, looked like an old grizzly bear with his unkempt beard and scraggly hair. The photographer and video guy, Perry Lane, came next, hauling his cameras.
Hey, Marla,
Stern said.
Didn't expect to see you out here tonight.
When I heard the victim was Dr. Hopkins, I wanted to come. Stern shook his head.
Hard to believe, isn't it? So full of vitality this morning. I guess if life was fair, John Lennon would still be alive and Lee Harvey Oswald would be dead.
Dugan tried to bite his tongue, but couldn't.
Lee Harvey Oswald is dead, Roger. Mark David Chapman shot Lennon.
Stern waved his hand.
Oh, you know what I mean.
The muscular blonde placed her briefcase on the ground, stepped forward, and extended her hand toward Marla.
I'm Jessie Lou Winters.
Marla shook her hand.
Marla Easton, I've seen you around.
Jessie Lou motioned to the big bearded man.
This mountain here is Big Jim Thomas, and the guy with the cameras is Perry Lane.
Marla nodded toward the 2 men.
Nice to meet you.
With a gravelly voice, Big Jim said,
Howdy, Marla. Hope you're enjoying your new job. We'll be crossing paths now and again.
The photographer smiled, then quickly averted his eyes.
We think this might be a homicide, but we're not sure,
Dugan said.
The body's in the kitchen. Take plenty of pictures and video. Dust everything for prints and whatever else you can do to help us make that determination.
Dugan turned and waved toward the back where Deputy Wilford was draping crime scene tape around the lab.
You might find something in that garage. Doc Hopkins converted it into a laboratory. Someone ransacked the place.
Stern blew out a long breath, a half whistle.
Sounds like an all-nighter. No doubt about that. Follow me.
He led the way along the sidewalk, up the steps onto the front porch, and into the house. They stopped in the family room in front of the fireplace.
Body's around that corner in the kitchen. You got a lot of work to do in there. Marla and I will walk through the house and check things out. If we find anything suspicious, we'll let you know. You can do a tour later, but right now I want you to focus on the kitchen and garage out back.
That'll be plenty for now.
Stern motioned toward the kitchen like an army scout, giving the troops the okay to move forward. The 3 forensic specialists passed through the wide doorway, but Stern lingered.
Marla, I wanted to check with you. Are we still on for tomorrow night?
Dugan eyed Marla. Her face reddened.
Here we go.
He thought.
Big date night with Stern the Stud.
Well, she nervously smoothed her hair on the side of her head, tucking it behind her ear. I'm having a difficult time finding a sitter. Shelley, my neighbor, is busy tomorrow night. Dugan raised his hand.
I'm off tomorrow night. I promised Gabe a fishing trip to the Rodanthe Pier.
Suddenly, Dugan felt very noble. His offer proved his magnanimity and lack of jealousy.
Go ahead, go out with Roger Stern. I'll even facilitate the romance by watching your son.
Perhaps this was the best way to rid himself of this silly crush. Face the fact that Marla wasn't attracted to him. Let her go. Maybe she and Stern were meant for each other. Anyway, Dugan enjoyed spending time with Gabe. They hit it off well together. Stern spread his hands as if preparing to receive a gift.
There you go. We can kill two birds in the bush with one hand.
Dugan cringed. Maybe he shouldn't expedite a relationship between his new deputy and a guy who can't keep his metaphors straight.
I guess that would be all right,
Marla said.
Dugan, are you sure about this?
Dugan put his best face on.
No problem. Gabe and me'll have a great time. You better make room in your freezer for all the fish we'll bring home.
Okay, then,
Marla said.
Pick you up about 7?
Stern asked.
7 is good.
Stern saluted like a Boy Scout, about-faced, and walked into the kitchen. Marla turned to Dugan.
Very nice of you to watch Gabe for me. He likes you a lot, you know.
The feeling's mutual. If I ever had a son, I'd want him to be just like Gabe.
Dugan noticed Marla's blue eyes fixed on him, as if she were looking into him rather than at him. That was rare. It froze his train of thought. Finally, the silence became uncomfortable, and she glanced around the room.
Well, what's next?
I noticed in the foyer a door on the left. I think it's an office. Let's check it out.
They walked toward the front of the house, and Dugan tried the door. It was unlocked. He reached around the wall and flipped on the light to reveal an office, probably about 10 by 12 feet. A large mahogany computer desk and companion printer station took up most of the space in the back of the room. On the wall to the left hung a large landscape painting, a river valley winding through mountains. Dugan guessed it to be a scene from the western part of North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains. A recliner sat next to the window that looked out onto the front of the property, and a bookshelf took up most of the opposite wall. In general, the office appeared undisturbed, not overly neat, but nothing out of place. Dugan walked to the computer desk and, using his handkerchief, moved the mouse. The wide, flat-screen monitor lit up. Access required a password. Marla stepped up beside him and bent over to get a better look.
Try Jasper.
Dugan wrapped the handkerchief around his index finger, poked in the letters, and hit the enter key. The wrong password error message popped up.
No luck.
How about Methuselah?
Dugan typed in the letters and hit the enter key. Hopkins' desktop appeared.
Voila, I'm impressed. Good guess.
Marla straightened and took a deep breath. A smile lit up her face.
Most people pick passwords they can remember, things important to them like names or dates.
Dugan studied the desktop. Immediately, he noticed 4 folders with similar names in the upper right corner. Training 2009, Training 2010, Training 2011, and Training 2012.
Training for what? Distance running?
He double-clicked the 2009 folder. The window contained 12 folders, the months of the year. He double-clicked January. Each day was documented with distances and times. Below those numbers, the weather was described with brief statements. Cold and sunny, 40 degrees, windy but unusually warm, 55 degrees, downright cold and snowy, 15 degrees. Then Dr. Hopkins wrote a few sentences about how he felt physically.
Really tired today. Don't know how much longer these old joints can pound away on these roads. May have to cut back on mileage tomorrow.
Dugan closed that window.
I wonder if...
He double-clicked the 2010 folder and then opened the October folder.
He recorded the race we ran together 2 years ago.
Was it on the same course as today's race?
Yes, the Colony Lost and Found 5K. Here it is, exactly as I remember. He ran a 1955 that day. I ran 1935. Look at his comment.
My time was good for a 63-year-old man, but I don't plan on racing again till I'm a lot faster.
And today he finally raced again,
Marla said.
And he was definitely a lot faster. Doc Hopkins knew this day would come.
Dugan slapped his thigh.
He had to be on something to cut 2.5 minutes off his time.
but we don't know that for sure yet.
We will, once the autopsy results are completed. I'm guessing they'll find illegal substances. Maybe several in-demand drugs, the kind people ransack labs to steal.
Do you think that's what this is all about? A lab full of designer performance-enhancing drugs?
I'd bet my next pay on it.
Dugan closed the 2 windows and opened the 2011 folder. Then he double-clicked the October folder.
All right, let's see where his training was 1 year ago.
He hit the page down button until October 23rd appeared.
Ran 8 miles in about 60 minutes today. Cloudy and mid-50s. Felt incredible. This is the first day of the rest of my life. What will I feel like 1 year from now? 50 years from now? Time will tell.
He couldn't have been serious. 50 years from now, that would make him 115 years old.
Just like Methuselah the turtle.
Dugan felt a weird buzz go down his spine as his and Marla's eyes met.
My guess is he's been testing chemical compounds on animals and himself, ones that increase physical endurance. He came up with a drug that genetically reprograms muscle fibers to use energy more efficiently. He made a breakthrough.
And someone found out about it.
Marla said.
A drug like that would be in high demand.
No doubt. It would be worth millions of dollars, both legally and on the black market. Doc's time in the race today tipped someone off. The thief knew Hopkins was onto something.
Marla knotted her eyebrows.
Then it's possible the killer was at the race.
Possibly, or else he saw the results online. Nowadays, road race results are posted on the net within 2 hours after the finish. A 65-year-old man running 17:35 would definitely grab the attention of anyone knowledgeable about 5K times, especially someone who pushes performance-enhancing drugs. It's a good hypothesis anyway. We'll wait and see what the CSI crew comes up with. In the meantime, let's check out the rest of the house.
Marla led the way out the door, but stopped at the bookcase.
Look at some of these titles. The Science of Life Extension. Anti-aging strategies, ageless animals, engineered negligible senescence.
Negligible what?
Senescence, not sure what that means. Check this one out.
She pointed to the next book, a thick black one that was not completely pushed back into place.
He must have been reading this one today. It's sticking out almost halfway. Let me see your handkerchief.
Dugan handed Marla the white handkerchief, and she covered her hand with it and gripped the wide spine of the tome. She carefully slid it out and lowered it.
What do you know? It's a family Bible.
I didn't know Doc Hopkins was a religious man.
Marla thumbed through the pages and almost dropped the book when her thumb reached the cover.
Did you see that?
Some kind of cutout.
Marla opened the cover and flipped through the first few pages. At page 35, with the heading Genesis 3, a rectangular section had been cut out of the pages, and a small book rested in its place.
It's some kind of diary.
Marla extended the Bible toward Dugan.
Here, hold the Bible and I'll remove the book.
Dugan took the weight of the Bible into his hands, and Marla delicately pried the small book from its slot. It had a light gray cover with the words Methuselah Journal handwritten on it in script. She opened it to the first entry, October 15th, 2011, and read the first sentence.
Today, I injected myself with the Methuselah serum.